Those of you who believe that the word of the government is right and always truthful, I'm afraid you are in for a big disappointment. And this government particularly has a tendency to not only exaggerate its achievements, but to bury its failures. In 2019, they said we will achieve a 5 trillion economy by 22-23. Now they have shifted the goalpost to 23-24, and I found that today a very pro-government economist has floated the first balloon, push it to 2024-25. Now it's possible they will push it again to another year. People have stopped looking for work because they are so deeply disappointed with the work situation that they believe that there's no work, there's no job anywhere. Why should I look for work? The size of China's economy and India's economy are practically incomparable today. There's no point comparing India and China. We are still a poor country. The last year, 2021-22, look at the growth rates. First quarter, 20.1. Second quarter, 8.4. Third quarter, 5.4. And the fourth quarter, 4.1. And yet, the Modi government says we are growing at a brisk pace. If half the population does not complete even 10 years of schooling, and if roughly 1/3 of your children are either wasted or stunted, what kind of a human resources do you have? And if 25% of your population does not even own a bicycle, how can you call yourself a country that is developing at a rate that is satisfactory? Primary objective must be everybody must have a job. 8,72,243 jobs are vacant in the central government alone. Now, why has Mr. Modi not filled it over the last 8 years? And today he says, I will fill 10 lakh jobs. If the Congress comes to power, if the Congress heads a government, our focus will be on jobs. And I promise you, we will not turn around and tell you selling pakoras is also a job. The bulk of the engineering colleges which come out of the mushroomed colleges are only equipped to be a site supervisor in a construction site. My young friend, Mohan Kumar Mangalam, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, members of the All India Professional Congress, friends. I have been requested to speak in English, but I shall try to intersperse it with some Tamil sentences. You know that the Congress party met in Udaipur and adopted several resolutions, one of them on the economic policy. I chaired the group which discussed the economic situation and which suggested various programs and policies and positions on economy. And I suggested we christen it the Nav Sankalp Economic Policy, NSEP. The only purpose was to distinguish it from what we did in 1991. By all accounts, there is practically unanimity among economists, historians, sociologists that 1991 marked a watershed, a clear break from the past, and a new path. But remember, in 1991, it was not a premeditated change. 1991 was a post-election set of policies, although many of us, I included, tried to trace it back to the 1989 Congress Manifesto, and in particular the 1991 Congress Manifesto. There were indeed elements in the earlier two manifestos which we can claim to be the origin of the 1991 new economic policy, but to be completely honest and fair, 1991 was a clear break with the past. I know many of our friends disagreed with us. Comrade Rangarajan is here. His party disagreed with us. But whether the nation accepted it or not can only be judged when you look back. And looking back now 31 years, clearly the nation has accepted the change of the path. Nation has benefited from the change of that path. Nation's wealth, nation's growth rate, nation's per capita income have all increased dramatically since 1991. I don't wish to go into the statistics and numbers, because even otherwise I have a number of statistics and numbers, and I don't want to make this into a lecture on economics. I want to focus on the economics as well as the political forces that can drive the economic change. Just to put it in perspective, the GDP increased 4 times more closely between 2004 and 2014. We recorded an average growth rate of close to 7.5%, which has never been achieved before. And for 3 to 4 years running, we even crossed 9%. According to the World Bank, the numbers can be debated, but close to 230 million people were lifted out of poverty. Many of the things that we take for granted today happened post-1991. I have several anecdotes which I used to recite when I addressed audiences in the 90s and early 21st century, but they would be passé by now. For example, I used to say that, did you know that if you wanted to talk to your mother or father in Mumbai, you had to book a call and dial a number called 180, and then to find out the position of your call, you have to dial another number called 181. And then you want to know the position of your call in the waiting list, you have to dial another number called 188, and she will coolly tell you you're 174 in the waiting list, sir. The generation today, and remember that 24% of India is under the age of 15 years. Forget 30 years, again at the age of 15 years. 50% of India is under the age of 25 years. They're all post-1991 generation. And to tell them that you have to book a call, they'll say, what are you talking about? Didn't you have mobiles then? So those 1991 marked a clear break. Now my hypothesis, our hypothesis in Udaipur was, it's time to reset economic policy. 30 years is too long for a policy to run its course. In 30 years, we have learnt many lessons. We have unlearned many lessons. We have achieved much, but we have also not achieved much of what we wanted. There is still poverty. There is still hunger. There is still huge regional imbalances. And to say that the policies that we adopted in 1991 and fine-tuned it over a period of time will be sufficient for the next 10, 20, 30 years is completely foolish. We have to reset policy. But I must pause here to say, those of you who believe in everything that a government says, and I'm not talking about the present government, I'm talking about any government. Those of you who believe that the word of the government is right and always truthful, I'm afraid you are in for a big disappointment. And this government particularly has a tendency to not only exaggerate its achievements, but to bury its failures. I did tweet yesterday as a precursor to this meeting. Take just one example. In the 2022-23 budget, the finance minister said, we will set the fiscal deficit at 6.4%, which will be an improvement over the last year's 6.7%. But yesterday, the finance minister has floated the idea that we will try to achieve 6.7%. They've already backslided. Similarly, when the government came to power, again, in 2019, they said we will achieve a 5 trillion economy by 22-23. Now they have shifted the goalpost to 23-24, and I found that today a very pro-government economist has floated the first balloon, push it to 2024-25. Now it's possible they will push it again to another year. Let's look at the objective facts. And I think these objective facts should tell you what is the state of the economy. India has a population of 140 crore. The size of the labor force, which is anyone between the age of 15 and 65, that is the labor force in the country, is 43 crore, 430 million. The labor force participation rate, that is those in the labor force who are actually working or looking for work. You have to count both. I'm working or looking for work. A lot of people don't look for work. I wish I could do that. The percentage that is looking for work is only 42.13%. So straight away, India's population of 140 crore people is supported by the work of approximately 17 or 18 crore people. In the US, it's over 60%, the labor force participation rate. In many countries of Europe, although their retirement age is earlier, practically everybody works or looks for work. For some reason, and the CMI's Mahesh Vyas has a theory, People have stopped looking for work because they are so deeply disappointed with the work situation that they believe that there's no work, there's no job anywhere. Why should I look for work? The fact that labor force participation rate, it went down to below 40%, it's picked up to 42%. The fact that it is 42% means we are straight away losing roughly 1/2 of the GDP that we could produce. Instead of 42%, if it was 63%, 1.5 times of that. Simple calculation will show that our GDP should be at least 1.5 times more. And the female LFPR is 9.4%. 90.6% of women in the labor force are either not working or not looking for work. They're working in their homes. Unemployment ratio is naturally very high. So you have a double whammy here, a declining or a low labor force participation rate and a high unemployment rate. Straight away, this puts India in a huge handicap when we are racing with other nations. For example, the government is proud to say we are the fastest growing economy in the world. We are growing at a rate faster than China. Technically, that's correct. You are growing faster than China. You are running a race where your speed is faster than China, but for some strange reason, which I will explain, China travels a longer distance than you do. You might ask me why or how. We are running at a faster rate, but China travels a longer distance. How is that possible? It's possible because the size of China's economy and India's economy are practically incomparable today. There's no point comparing India and China. I don't envy China, I want to emulate China. But the size of China's economy is $16.7 trillion, whereas the size of India's economy is $3 trillion. They are 5.5 times bigger than you. When they are 5.5 times bigger than you, in 2022, China grew at 5% and added $2,600 billion to its GDP. Your size was $3 trillion, that is $3,000 billion. You grew at, in 2021-22, at about 7.1%. We added $500 billion. India added $500 billion in 12 months, whereas China adds $2,600 billion in the same 12 months. It's adding nearly an Indian GDP every year. And this distance will grow. In fact, if you project it over 3 years, it's horrendous. The difference is horrendous. As a result, China's defense budget is larger than our total budget. So there's no point comparing and saying, I'm growing at a rate faster than China or faster than Vanuatu Island. There's no point in saying that. You must also look at what is the base on which we are growing. We are still a poor country. And there are some numbers which will establish we are a poor country. The last household survey revealed that the median, you know the median is half the population is above that number, half the population is below that number. That is the median. It is not average, it is the median. The median monthly income of an Indian household is 15,000 rupees. And the median household consumption of an Indian household is 11,000 rupees. Half the people are above that, which is a happy situation. But remember, half the people are below that. Half the people are consuming for the whole household 11,000 rupees or less. Now what can they consume? And therefore, this statistics came as a great surprise to me, and I'm sure it will come as a great surprise to you. You know the number of families in the country which does not own a car or a two-wheeler or even a bicycle? Just guess the number. Guess the number of families in India which don't even own a bicycle. 25% of Indian families do not own a car or a bike or a bicycle. Our GDP has been stagnant for 2 years, thanks to the pandemic and thanks to the Modi government. At constant prices, on 31/3/2020, that is 2 years ago, before the corona, the GDP was 145 lakh crore rupees, and in 31/3/22, it was 147 lakh crore rupees, a marginal difference. But in terms of per capita, on 31/3/2020, the per capita income was 1,08,247. In 31/3/22, it declined to 1,07,760. So we are not richer. If anything, we are poorer. In the last 4 quarters of 2021-22, look at the growth rates. The last year, 2021-22, look at the growth rates. First quarter, 20.1. Second quarter, 8.4. Third quarter, 5.4. And the fourth quarter, 4.1. And yet, the Modi government says we are growing at a brisk pace. The growth rate has declined over the last 4 quarters. Now, what will be for the first quarter of 22-23, I cannot say. We will come to the end of June and the figures will come on August 31. But because the base is 20.1 over last first quarter, it cannot be very high. But I suspend judgment on that. Now, look at the impact. I've got a lot of numbers to explain the impact, particularly in health and education, but I will give you only the numbers on health. 57% of all women in India are anemic. If you count the age group 15 to 19 years of women, 59% are anemic. Why are people anemic in this country? The answer is very simple. They don't have enough food. Or they don't have enough nutritious food. And this directly impacts our children. 32% of India's children are underweight. 35% of India's children are stunted. That is age to height. 19.3% of India's children are wasted. And 7.7% of India's children are severely wasted. Now, what kind of a human resource are we building in this country? If 35% of your children are stunted and nearly 20% of your children are wasted, what kind of a human resource can you develop? And remember, 59% of all women and 49% of all people don't even complete class 10. So what kind of a human resource do we have? We have a human resource that is physically weak and educationally extremely weak. If half the population does not complete even 10 years of schooling, and if roughly 1/3 of your children are either wasted or stunted, what kind of a human resources do you have? The infant mortality rate, because of some states which are lagging hopelessly behind, like Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, the IMR is 32.5, and the under 5 mortality rate is 41.9. The world's best number is 2 per thousand. And here we have 32 children and 41 children out of 1,000 dying before they reach the age of 5. Therefore, let's face the truth. We have grown, we have created wealth, we have achieved tremendous technological progress, but we cannot say that we've abolished either poverty or, even worse, we've abolished hunger. The first step to abolish poverty is to abolish hunger. And where are we in the World Hunger Index? 101. Out of about 140 countries, we are 101. We have mountains of food grains. Our farmers produce more wheat and more paddy every year than the previous year. Yet there is massive hunger and there is massive poverty. We had greater poverty and we had greater hunger. And I'm not in any way discounting the progress we have made. But let's not pat ourselves and say we are in the pink of health. I asked this question yesterday, how can you be in the pink of health? You have so much health problems, health deficiencies, so much educational deficiencies. So many of your children are either stunted or wasted. So many of your women are anemic. Your household consumption for half the population is less than 11,000 per month. And if 25% of your population does not even own a bicycle, how can you call yourself a country that is developing at a rate that is satisfactory? Which is why we think that the time has come to reset policy. And the new Sankalp economic policy, the new Resolve economic policy, NSEP, says that if a Congress government or a Congress-led government comes into office, the focus must be on jobs. It's no longer good enough to say, I'll provide rations to everyone at one end, or I'll provide the golden quadrilateral 4-lane highways and 6-lane highways connecting every town and every city. All these are good. Nobody's in any way diminishing their utility. But the first requirement, the primary objective must be everybody must have a job. Everybody in the labor force who wants to work, who's looking for work, and who otherwise would be looking for work if he had not given up hope, must be provided a job. There are thousands and thousands of jobs. You know the famous Sherlock Holmes maxim, the best place to hide is to hide in plain sight. Nobody looks at your table in the living room. They will look for a cupboard here or an almirah there or a safe here. Nobody looks at the table in the living room. The best place to hide is in plain sight. We have thousands and thousands of jobs that are hidden in plain sight. For example, 8,72,243 jobs are vacant in the central government alone. Now, why has Mr. Modi not filled it over the last 8 years? And today he says, I will fill 10 lakh jobs. It's not 10 lakh. It's 10 lakh minus 8 lakh 72,243. Your net addition is only 1 lakh 28,000 jobs. Why have you not filled these jobs? There are over 1 lakh vacancies in the Indian Defense Forces. There are huge vacancies in banks, public sector undertakings. But apart from these obvious, visible jobs which have not been filled, there are thousands and thousands of jobs that are waiting to be discovered and created. I don't know if you've seen a YouTube interview of a doctor in Bangalore. No, the other doctor who runs that hospital. Will come to me in a minute. Devi Shetty. Now he says, we need 50,000 in this discipline of medicine, 100,000 in this discipline of medicine, 150,000 in this discipline of medicine. And you are building huge campuses for medical college. Whereas in the Arab countries, a medical college is run in a mall and they produce doctors for other countries. Why do you need anything more than 50,000 square feet for a medical college? Just look at that interview. I just visited a law college near Thiruvallur, which was started 3 years ago. On a 50-acre campus, a law college has been built. Whereas world over, law colleges are perhaps in 4 or 5 floors in one building. That's all you require. What does a law college require? It doesn't require 50 acres of land. And when we wanted to plans for the new law college in my constituency, I was told it's going to cost you 101 crore. I said, why do you need 101 crore for a law college? It requires, for 5 years, it requires 5 classrooms after 5 years. And even if you have 2 sections, it requires 10 classrooms. And 10 classrooms can be accommodated in 3 floors. These are our misplaced priorities. There are thousands and thousands of jobs, and I can list the thousands of jobs in agriculture, in agro-processing, agricultural extension officers, doctors, nurses, paramedics, technicians, teachers, nurses, professors, veterinary doctors, veterinary assistants, horticulture, sericulture, pisciculture. Thousands and thousands of jobs can be created in this country. We are not looking at them at all. And we are saying there are no jobs. Thousands and thousands of jobs are crying to be discovered or created. So our first focus will be jobs. If the Congress comes to power, if the Congress heads a government, our focus will be on jobs. And I promise you, we will not turn around and tell you selling pakoras is also a job. These are regular jobs, what the ILO calls a decent job. A job with certain degree of security, a job which gives you a regular monthly income, and a job which gives you a certain tenure and social security benefits. Such jobs can be created. We have a plan to create them. We can create them. And we promise jobs for everyone who wants to work. But we have to draw out people who have given up hope of finding a job. The second focus will be, while the focus on physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure, all that is not to be belittled. Our primary focus must be on health infrastructure and education infrastructure. If we want to compete with the rest of the world, our children, our young men and women must be physically and intellectually equipped to compete with them. Today, let me say you with great degree of sadness, our children and our young men are not physically equipped, not intellectually equipped to compete with the world. You might turn around and say, only yesterday an Indian became the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Of course, it will become. He will become, she will become. We have such a large number of children and young men, 100, 200, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, will, even under these difficult circumstances, rise to head Google or Microsoft. But that doesn't mean the vast majority of Indian children, vast majority of Indian youth are physically and intellectually equipped to compete with the world. Despite our system, despite our deficiencies, an individual here, an individual there may rise to the top. That's because of the huge number of people we have got, the huge base of human resources we have got. But that doesn't speak for all of them. So after jobs, the focus must be on health infrastructure and education infrastructure. We must ensure that every child has a proper 12-year school education. Today, the ASER, the annual survey of educational, annual status of educational, ASER, says an 8th grade child cannot read a 3rd grade textbook. You don't have to go too far. Just call somebody in your neighborhood, your maid or your domestic help, your driver, your watchman, or somebody in your office, and ask him to bring his child, boy or girl, to your home one day, and ask the child, what are you studying? And if the child says, I'm studying 7th or 8th standard, give the child a 3rd grade textbook. More often than not, you will find that 7 or 8 out of 10 children cannot read a 3rd grade textbook. And worse, they cannot write, they cannot draft and write a 1-page composition or a 1-page essay. They can't even draft a letter. And even worse, they can't converse with you except in colloquial local language. They may be in English medium schools, they may be learning English as a language, they can't speak. The other day, a young girl who's in the first or second year of engineering, she came to me and said, I want a recommendation for my aunt or to be admitted to AIMS. I didn't know the girl. So I gave a letter to the AIMS director, and that's the least I can do. But she couldn't speak a word of English. And she's in the second year of engineering. Not a word of English. Now, what will she understand? What questions that she can ask her teacher? What doubts will be clarified? And the result is, a major engineering construction company told me, engineering graduates, the bulk of engineering graduates, we're not talking about IIT, we're not talking about the topper of IIT. The bulk of the engineering colleges which come out of the mushroomed colleges are only equipped to be a site supervisor in a construction site. And we train them for 2 years before they can take up any kind of engineering responsibility. So our second focus will be health and education. All our children must be healthy, well-fed, nutritious food, and they must be physically strong. And they must be educationally, intellectually equipped to take on the world. Everybody must complete 12 years of school education, and at least one half of them must go to a college education. And when I mean college education, I also mean vocational education, post-school education. The third and most important is the new economic policy must address inequality. Those of you who have read Piketty, and he comes out with one startling statement every year, inequality is growing in the world, and inequality is growing fastest in India. That's his finding. Inequalities are growing fastest in India. In the pandemic year, 147, I'm not talking about 147,000 or 147 lakhs, 147 individuals added 30 lakh crore to their net wealth. 147. Now you may know some. 147 individuals added 30 lakh crore in the pandemic years. There is no pride in boasting that an Indian is among the top 10 richest of the world. The question is your bottom 10%, does it have enough food? Does it have enough shelter? Does it have enough transport? Does it have enough leisure? Inequality is growing in this country. There are more people on the streets of big cities than there were 2 or 3 years ago. There are more people who are jobless. There are more people who are homeless. There are more people looking for free food. No, that's not a good sign at all. Inequality is growing at a very rapid rate in India. So the third goal must be, we must reduce inequalities. Now, how we do it is a different matter, but we can do it. There must be a net transfer of wealth from the wealthy sections to the poorer sections. There's nothing inequitable about it. You cannot dismiss it as a communist utopia. That's absolutely necessary to preserve social peace. You cannot have a socially peaceful country. You cannot have a country where people are united towards marching towards a goal with such huge inequalities. I can see the inequalities. If you travel around the country, you can see these inequalities. These inequalities have grown in the last 10, 15 years than ever before. So these are the broad outlines of the Navsankalp economic policy, NSEP. The focus is on jobs. The second focus, without choosing one over the other, is on health and education. And the third focus is, as we grow, a greater share of the wealth must go to the poorer sections. Unless we lift the average, unless we lift the bottom 10%, there is no pride, there is no satisfaction in saying, my top 10% is among the best in the world. The bottom 10% must not be among the worst in the world. The average must not be worse than the average of the world. This is the broad outline of the Navsankalp economic policy, and I hope we will get a chance to implement the policy. We have written, we have spoken, many have written and spoken, but I have no faith that the present government will implement any of these elements. They are in their own echo chamber, where each one tells each other, we are doing fine, and all's well with this world. The old proverb must be modified, Modi is in charge and all's well with this world. That's not true. That's simply not true of the vast majority of the people of this country. Thank you.